Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Wendy. Happy birthday to you.
They were all lovely and such a surprise. Some of the people, you'd been through my address book and not told me, and some people, really good friends, came and I loved it. I spend most of my time lying here actually because although I sort of look lively and all that, I haven't got much sort of reserves now, and I mean I'm okay to walk up to the park and back, but that's about my lot now. Well, I was born in Muswell Hill,
North London.
North London, in our home, and I was the third of 4 children. Josephine, Rosalind, I was called Gwendolyn, never had been called Gwendolyn, and Valerie, my younger sister. And the number 2 and 4 were fair and beautiful, and number 1 and 3 were sort of, we had pudding mason haircut, dark haired, and not nearly as pretty as the other 2. We sort of got used to it. After Muswell Hill, we moved further out North London to Totteridge, which was a lovely place. It got a toe in the country, and at the end of our garden was a golf course. So we had a lovely long back garden, green and trees and things, and then the green beyond of the golf course. It was very beautiful and lovely. Well, it had to close. Only 11 of us came back, and 4 of them were us 4 girls. So it was a non-starter. So my elder sister started a chicken farm. The next one went and did a typing course, shorthand and typing, but because I was only 14 and Vav was 11, and so my parents had to find another school for us. And anyway, they phoned all around, and then they came across Queenswood, which was really a girls' public school, a very, very good school. We'd never have aspired to have gone to that. However, half their girls who lived in the north didn't come back to be in the London area, and so in actual fact, Queenswood was very pleased to have 2 new girls.
No,
So that,
when you're in trouble, you take any old trash, don't you?
that's right. So that's how we got in there, and it was a wonderful experience because we got up early, had breakfast at 7:30, something terribly early, and then we'd have sort of lessons and things, and then every afternoon after lunch we had to go and lie on our beds for 3/4 of an hour, no talking, you could read and anything, and then after that, games. Every afternoon we had games, it was absolutely heaven. And in the winter we played hockey, which I absolutely loved.
You were quite good at hockey, I think.
Well, I don't know. Our teacher said I was the best left wing they'd ever had, but you know, I believe she said that to everybody probably. I loved it. I really loved it. But then one day we were bombed. This dreadful noise was down on the road, and then the next one was on the hockey pitch, and we were only just ever so near in the house. Oh, and all the glass from the ceiling tinkled into our rice pudding, and it was awful. However, no talking, girls. Stand up.
We're just being bombed, but what's that? Yes.
That's a terrible noise. And so we were led down to the cellars. We didn't even know there were cellars there. And there we sat for hours. And I mean, the pain of flipping well gone.
Yes.
Anyway, after that we used to sleep downstairs in the corridors with classrooms each side of us, you know, and we were 2 to a camp bed, top to tail. Oh God! And I can hear those beds creaking now.
And what happened to your career with hockey?
Well, that carried on. We used a lacrosse pitch. It wasn't a patch on the hockey pitch, but it was a lot better than nothing.
Good.
Well, if I go back to Muswell Hill, nobody had a car except us, and so we all used to play in the road. Didn't matter, because the only things that came past would be horse and carts, and the rag and bone man would come, rag and bone, and we'd all bring our rubbish out and stick it on the thing, and the horse was so good. It would just walk along and then wait until the man had got what he wanted, and then it would go on. I really enjoyed my time in Muswell Hill very much.
Yeah.
I had to walk to school. It was about a mile, but in those days a little girl would walk to school on her own. I'd stop halfway and a lady in a shop would see me across the main road, and then I'd go on to my school. I loved my school so much, and I don't know why I was chosen, because I wasn't particularly good looking or anything, but the Shaftesbury Society, whatever that was, we'd saved up money and I was to present our purse, and so I was in short little socks and a dress and so cold and frightened. However,
I can see it in your face now. Yes.
well, it was bad. But we were all up on the stage, all little kids, because I wasn't very old. And then, in those days, they had to turn out all the lights to take a photo. And they had one man in that aisle and one man in that aisle, and they synchronised their lights and they took a photo of us. Terrified little kids we all were, because we hated the dark. Anyway, that passed, and eventually we moved to Totteridge, which was a lovely place, just in the country over there. My father had found a job for me. The thing was, it was wartime, and mostly you went straight into the army or the navy or something. But he'd already given two girls, Jo and Ro, to the forces, and he was a dairy engineer himself, and he wanted me, seeing as he didn't have a son, to follow his footsteps. So he got this wonderful job for me in Reading at the National Institute for Research in Dairying. So I became a laboratory assistant, left school in the middle of the Easter term.
Right.
Yeah. And it was good. I learnt so much and did so much. And I then was also studying for an exam at the same time. I'd stay over some evenings, and one of the professors there would coach me, and I took the exam was with the City and Guilds of London.
Okay.
And I took milk processing and control. I'd sort of studied well, so I came first actually, and I got the most wonderful big bronze medal with sort of in relief all the guilds.
Wow.
Of London,
Wow.
I've got that now. In fact, Amanda's got it in right up.
And I think it took you to Liverpool at some stage. What was that about?
Yes. That was when I'd sort of qualified and all that. And I went to work at my father's firm there. What was it called? Anyway,
It was in Liverpool, yes.
Technical service.
Okay.
In London. And they'd built a new dairy in Liverpool because the old one was down because of the war and everything. And I had to go up and test everything to see that it was all working. And it was so funny because being a girl made all the difference, honestly it did. For a start, I stayed at the dairy manager's house. He was a widower, but his sister was standing in and looking after the family, so that was all okay. And we'd go to the dairy at 3 in the morning to see the fresh milk coming in and for me to test it, And anyway, at the very top of this dairy was the most beautiful room, dining room, where the sort of the knobs used to have their meal, and I used to have my meals up there. I was very, very lucky. But the day, once I'd made all my tests and things that day, the dairy manager would take me all round Liverpool. I was driving, I was a passenger, but the thing about this car, it was a Triumph Dolomite, and it was ever so low, the seat, and the minute I sat down, my suspenders came undone. I mean, that was really awful.
Yeah.
And so I only had the time between he got out of his seat, came round to let me out, to get them sort of done up again quickly. I'll never think, it was so inconvenient, I just can't tell you. I mean, nowadays we have tights, and we don't have a problem of them falling down. I started driving when I joined my father's firm. They gave me, I had 6 lessons, and then outside that evening was this car which I had to drive 10 miles home. A different new car, Austin 12. It was the size of an Austin 10, but it had an extra, it was a lovely car. And anyway, I was so worried about driving home. And then the next morning, instead of driving up to the traffic lights that are on a hill, I'll sort of go round this way, so I didn't have to wait at the traffic light
to do a hill start. Yes.
You know, all these things happen, but I did ever so well, because I visited right from Cornwall to Chelmsford, all over the place, but I had to be ever so careful, just keeping out of arm's length of some dairy managers, and I got quite good at that actually. Just taking a step at the right minute so they couldn't put their arm around it.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to pick up, but I loved it, and so it went on. However, I started to get upset by seeing, my parents were separating, to seeing Daddy in the daytime and Mummy at home. And I sort of had a bit of a breakdown. So I left the firm and joined the National Milk Testing Scheme, which took me all over the place. And we used to get up at 3 in the morning, I was then in Bristol, to go to the farms to sample the fresh milk and blah, 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 you see. But then, of course, the war ended. Oh my goodness me. And of course, up to then, no lights, street lights were ever used, but they put them on. Not all of them worked. And I was down in Britain, and everyone was hugging and kissing everybody. We were so happy. And a few street lights came on, not all of them. Mummy and Daddy were going to have a divorce, sadly, because of his bitch of a secretary who'd already broken up one marriage. Anyway, so we were due to go on the Norfolk board. Mummy and Daddy, my good friend Pauline and me, and Desmond, our miserable cousin who lived with us, and he brought a friend called Peter, who was an air sea rescue pilot. However, we sort of went on this lovely holiday on the Broads, but one day I was very naughty, because Peter, after lunch, was settled in that little crook where the front deck meets the back deck, and there's sort of a nook, and I couldn't help it, I tipped him in the drink. I know, he came out like an avenging whale, and although they weren't allowed in our cabin where I rushed into, he came in, grabbed me, put me over his neck and gave. That's how we really connected.
Yes, and then rode on a few years you were married.
That's right. We married a few years after that. We were so happy. And then I was expecting, and then he got posted to Malta. Well, not his boat, the HMS Ocean, which was an aircraft carrier, was posted to Malta. So once I'd had the baby, I think he was only 6 weeks old, He was the youngest baby British Airways had ever taken up to that day. And so
6 weeks old?
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
then,
don't think you can get much younger than that, can you?
no, not really, no. And that took us to Malta. Oh gosh, it was nice in Malta. Because we couldn't afford to live in the English section, so we lived in the Maltese. But they were so friendly and nice, especially the men. The men loved looking at this little white baby because theirs were all dark and brown and different, you know. Anyway, I'd walk down to the market every morning because you'd go to the market for things. But if you wanted meat, you'd have to go into the butcher's. And it would be full of women who were all sort of not as tall as me. And I'm not very tall. And this butcher would serve everybody at the same moment. Honestly, it was absolutely... You were lucky to get out of there in an hour. However, I got my meat from there. And in our flat, we had one tap in the wall, that was our water supply, and the only drain we had was the loo. So everything had to go down the loo that we wanted to get rid of. It was most, but even so, I had an oven that I could stand on a paraffin heater, and you'd be surprised what you can do when you have to. You can.
Yes, yes.
It's wonderful.
And you just loved the Maltese sector, didn't you?
Oh, I did love it, yes, it was very nice. However, sadly, one day, I'd actually got all my ironing up to date. All Pete's shirts were hanging around the kitchen. And this friend of ours called in the middle of the day. A very good friend. And I thought, hello, nice to see you. But he had a rather straight face, however. He had come to tell me that Pete had been killed. Oh, goodness gracious me. I won't go through that, but and of course they took me and the baby away then from the flat, and I stayed with this very nice English couple who were in the army and were friends of Pete's until they got me a boat to go back to England.
So I think, am I right to think that Mike, your first son then, was 10 months old?
No,
6 months old.
only 6 months old.
And his dad, your husband Pete, he flew onto an aircraft carrier, and
That's right. Well, when they fly onto an aircraft carrier, they let out a hook which catches wires across the deck, and the hook bounced and missed them. So he landed on a plane and went straight into the drink at the other end. So it was, some of his crew got out, but not all. So he lies now in the Adriatic Ocean. It's, oh, so sad. Whetstone, near Totteridge, where my mum lived. And I went, there was a lovely Irish priest, Father Ryan. And oh, this was after Peter had been killed. I'd promised to bring up any children as Catholics. And if I wasn't a Catholic as well, I couldn't have done it. So I got instruction from him, and he entered me into the church, which was very nice. but he was such a lovely man. Anyway, to cut a long story short, talking about Father Ryan, he had a sister and a brother living very near where I went to live with my in-laws. And one night, it was so hot. And we lived at Leon Salem with the Isle of Wight bang opposite us, you know. And Sheila and I rarely had gone to a show in Portsmouth. And so we'd come back across the ferry to Gosport, got on the bus here, but when we got sort of the end of the sea line towards Leon Solent, we both decided we'd get out the bus and walk home through the sea, which we did. And by the time we got to Leon Solent, we both said, shall we swim? Yeah, us two respectable, you know, mothers. So we took off our clothes. It was dark, but not that dark.
all your clothes?
Well, of course, if you're going to the sea.
Well, just checking.
all our clothes. Decided to see, oh gosh, it was heaven. Anyway, eventually we came out and our clothes had gone. Oh, just imagine. being a respectable matron, naked, and half a mile from home, with 2 roads to cross with lights on. Oh my gosh! We quickly retired back into the sea to think it over. And then we heard laughing from the shore. And you know, some friends of ours had heard us go in and taken our clothes. Oh, what they mean, honestly, that was a rotten
People
thing.
can be rotten.
Anyway, they brought them back in the I never felt the same about those friends, so-called friends. Oh, I can't tell you how terrible you feel, absolutely starkers, so half a mile from home. Anyway, that was one of the funny things that happened. Actually, I went to live with them in the end, because my sister-in-law lived with them. It was a great big house, a bit like this, and Mike was only a year younger than the youngest, so he fitted in ever so well. We lived so near the beach, and we'd make sandwiches every afternoon, and the minute the kids were home from school, we'd go off down the beach.
Wonderful.
And that was a lovely routine that we kept going. So that was lovely. However, one night, a year or so after I'd been there, because I really didn't want to go anywhere, didn't want to do it, just quite happy to be there. He said, "Look, Wendy, would you do the bar for me?"
Your father-in-law. Who said, "Would you do the bar for me"?
Pa, my father-in-law,
Yeah. Okay.
Peter's dad, because I was living with them by now. He said, "Would you do the bar one night a week for me?" Because he was the barman. In fact, he was the sort of in charge of the not Little Hampton, Leon Solent Tennis Club, which was quite famous. And of course, he'd become the barman as well as everything else in there. So I did the bar one night a week. And you'd be surprised how interesting it is. Nobody takes any notice of you behind the bar, and it's amazing what you hear. Really amazing. You know, you just don't react to it, obviously, but it's amazing. However, one night, these 3 blokes came from the local naval establishment. They were all, what do you call them? People who had to do their time.
National Service.
National Service, that's right. One of them was a doctor. One of them, Bud, said he was a dentist and looked at everybody's teeth. But he wasn't. And the other was Tom. And the sort of 3 of them used to come together. Anyway, one night, they'd all gone home and I was clearing up. But Doc, they called him Doc because he'd qualified before he did his national service.
This is Ronald Thomas. Yeah?
Yes, Ronald Thomas. He waited behind and saw me home, which, I mean, there were all these lovely young girls, and there was I, 28, I think, by then.
How old?
Quite old, you know. Anyway, to cut a very long story short.
I just see the glint in your eye straight away there. I guess you're cutting a very interesting story short.
Quite right too, Paul. His time came when his service time was up and he could go back to civvies. So one night we were sort of saying good night as usual outside the house, and he said, "Look, I've got to go back to Wales. I can't go back without you. Will you marry me?" So of course I said yes. I'd met Doc the night I did the bar at the tennis club, and then one night he said, "Look, I've got to go back to Wales in 3 weeks' time. I can't go without you. Will you marry me?" So we did, and so we had to get very quickly married. Our local priest in Leon's Own should have married us, but he hated the forces. He was Irish, and wouldn't marry us. So the only thing I could do was to go back to my old church and the same priest say, "Look, this has happened. Can you marry us?" He said, "You must be resident." So he said, "Bring a suitcase full of clothes, leave them with your mother, who just lives, you know, a mile or so from here, and that will do. You've established residence, and then you can be married here. And that's what happened. So that's how I happened to be married in the same church twice.
And tell us about the immediately after the wedding. You went to a pub or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Of course, it was all very difficult to make a reception, so we used the Red Lion in Barnet. Everyone went up there. As Doc and I walked up the steps to go in there, there were sort of waiters and people standing waiting, offering sherry, I think. So I said, "Oh, have you got any rum?" Because that was my drink. And then Doc said, I couldn't have a whiskey, could I? And then I heard one of the men say to each other, "Service family." So we got our rum and our whiskey.
So what I love...
But it's very different in Wales to here. And
Because you were then married a week later, is that right?
no, not a week later, a few...
7 days.
About 3 days later, no, 3 weeks later. And of course everybody was shocked getting married so quickly. Of course they all said, "Is she?" But fortunately she wasn't.
There's a bit of good luck, yes.
He's a humanist. Anyway, I went to meet the Thomases, and Doc's father was a doctor. His dad had been a doctor. They'd been one years back. Every generation had been a doctor, you see. And of course, Doc was just going back home to work in the surgery and sort of be a good boy and do what he was told, but he wasn't really like that. However, we came and we lived in Merthyr and had this lovely flat at the bottom of an enormous house. So we had the gardening bit, which was utterly clogged with laurel leaves. And Mike, my son, who was then 7, over the years we were there, he dug every laurel bush out, and we had a nice open garden in here. It was great.
Right. It was on a bit of a hill, I think.
Oh gosh, the hill was like this. I know once when I went to Sheila, my sister-in-law from Leonsola, once she came to see me, and we parked on this hill, and when I opened the door, she screamed. She said, "Oh!" She couldn't get onto that. It was such a steep hill that we lived on, but people thought we were used to it.
Yeah.
I ended up
myself.
having, you were the eldest boy, and then we had 4 girls after.
Yes, and we moved into a bigger house.
And we moved into a bigger house where they had this lovely, great big black dog called Harvey. And when Mrs. Dando, the owner of the house, came to leave, because she'd moved into the flat that the house had been turned into, so we could move before. I said, "Look, if I can't move in now, we won't come, because I was only 8 weeks off having a baby." You know, anyway, so we moved in. Our solicitors were not present, both of them were away, so we moved in.
So nobody to mess up things, yes.
Absolutely, Paul. So I had the baby, and that was Manda.
Yes.
Because
Of course,
I had Manda in the nursing home, and then when we moved into Tregenna, I had Gaynor.
yes.
By that time, my father-in-law had retired, but was doing locums for everybody, and he was in Aberfan surgery when it happened. And because he went there, but there was nothing you could do.
No.
I know Mike got on his bike, because we were now in Sussex, and drove all the way there. When they stopped him, he just went over on the fields and things. He knew his way. And he was amongst the diggers, removing all this terrible coal dust that had covered. And when they eventually got through to the school, the headmaster was there with his arms around kids. It was so sad.
Underneath the coal tips that had fallen onto them.
Terribly sad. They just died like that.
Yeah.
But of course, 1 or 2 children had been late for school and survived. But they had to protect them because
everyone was so angry.
it was a bad winter, and very, very bad winter. The doctors couldn't use their cars because the snow was too deep. So they walked all their calls, and they were out for the count really. And anyway, first of all,
in April when the thaw came,
a doctor from Dallas just dropped dead, like when the weather was starting to improve. Then mine did. And then the doctor who I'd had for the babies was getting up to come to my doctor's funeral, and he died. So we lost 3 doctors in about 6 weeks.
And he was 36, Doc, my dad.
Yeah.
37, yeah.
Oh, I can't say how sad it was. Oh, but again, the local people are so special because the church was utterly full up to the top. But when we came out to drive up the 2 miles up to the cemetery, each side of the road was full of people for 2 miles. It was, I'll never forget how wonderful that was, actually.
And there was some interesting thing about the priests involved, I think.
Oh, yeah. Doc, we used to call him Doc. When he had calls, he'd just park outside the people. The police were always after him for parking in the wrong place. You know. But there was one sort of fairly fat policeman who particularly worried Doc. And when our cortege came, we sort of had to come round a corner like that, and the road also went down there. And this fat policeman was standing there, stopping any traffic. And I thought, oh, Doc would have liked this, seeing this policeman.
The people who he couldn't stand having to hold people back.
You know, even then, I couldn't help smiling. It's amazing how you can be more than one person at the same minute.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway.
And Father O'Leary figured in this, because you and Doc used to visit him?
Yes, Father O'Leary was I was a Catholic then. He was a priest of our church. And one evening he asked us down just sort of for a social evening. And I don't know what drink it was he drank, but Doc took one drink and said, Father, if you serve this in the communion, I'll join the church. Oh, they were very good friends. So sadly, when I heard that Doc had died, I just went straight down the road to Father O'Leary. And he was wonderful. He said, now look, you've got to go up to the Thomases, his parents, and tell them I'll phone that you're coming. And he sort of guided me.
Yeah.
And although we were in the Church of England quarter, oh no, that's right, we were in the Catholic quarter of the cemetery. When we got there, there was Father O'Leary standing waiting with his curate also. Do you know, I can't tell you how lovely that was of him. How dear, it was a very sad time. You can imagine. I'm afraid 3 of our doctors died. I think I've already told you that. Because the weather was so bad they couldn't use their cars. And they were all out for the count.
Yeah.
But so then eventually, after 2 years, I decided it was so difficult being put on a pedestal, which I sort of was. You couldn't talk to anybody.
Well, you were Mrs. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, Mrs. Thomas, no, Mrs. Dr. Thomas. You know, it was only just me.
Yeah.
So I decided to go back to England, and I looked at a map. I wanted to be not too near my sister Jo, and so I thought, oh good, Arundel is not too far, and that looks a nice place. So I went to Arundel and said what I wanted, and I had 6 children, I wanted a Catholic school, blah, blah, blah. And I had so much money, which was nothing. I didn't know Arundel was one of the most expensive places in the country, I didn't know. So he said, now look, we can't suit you here, but go to Littlehampton, that's only 5 miles from here, something like that. I'm sure you'll find something very good there. And how right he was.
Yeah.
The first I sort of went to Littlehampton, parked, and there was this estate agent, went in, they took me round all day, but the first place they took me to was an empty house with 4 bedrooms, lovely garden, front and back, garage, everything. And I liked it.
And that was
it was
purchased.
empty.
Yes.
It was, they moved 6 months before, couldn't sell it yet, because it was quite a good seller. So anyway, I put up with being shown all sorts of other houses for the rest of the day, phoned up Jo, who only lived 5 miles away, and said, look, I'm here. So she and Jerry came over to see it, but I'd forgotten that Jerry was an estate agent. I hadn't thought of asking his help. Mind you, I'm pleased I didn't. Anyway.